Hi guys, how's it going? Brian from Boas here. The VPI T positive Carmel Albino Boa is one of my all-time favorite boa morphs. Today I want to show you some VPI T positive boas that I have, as well as touch on the history of this morph and the physical characteristics that define it. I'm also going to discuss some future projects I have here at Boas involving that VPI T positive gene. If you find this video helpful, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe to the Boas YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any future videos on keeping and breeding boas in captivity. So the first thing to talk about is what exactly does the T stand for in the T positive boa. So the T stands for tyrosinase, which is an enzyme that's critical in the synthesis of melanin, which is the dark pigment in the skin of boa constrictors. So in many types of albinos, like the sharp albino and the cow albino, there's a complete disruption and the animals don't make any of this melanin pigment. In the tyrosinase positive or T positive strains, there's only a partial disruption since these animals still retain the enzyme tyrosinase. So rather than getting a complete lack of the dark pigment, there's just a change in the appearance of the dark pigment as well as the distribution of the dark pigment. And so a T positive albino boa has this beautiful caramel yellow color, this very light tan, yellowish color. Many of them also have quite a bit of pink and red pigment. This animal has these beautiful pinkish sides. They're selectively bred lines of VPI T positive boa, like the pink panther line that express more of the pinks and reds. But overall, they're just a very beautiful boa to look at. So the T stands for tyrosinase. I should also mention that the VPI in the name stands for Vida Preciosa International. And this is a python and boa breeding operation that's run by the highly renowned husband and wife team, David and Tracy Barker. And they're the ones who established this morph. What I really like about these is, they're definitely beautiful, but they don't scream that they're a genetic mutation. They almost look like a more natural appearing boa. The pattern is very similar to a natural boa. It's just a very light boa with this beautiful glowing color. Another great thing about these VPI T positive boas is they don't lose their beautiful colors over time. As they grow up, they retain this beautiful glowing color. As you probably know, a lot of the morph boas, like the call strain especially, they tend to lose their color over time and they become really washed out. But with the VPI, they just retain this beautiful color, this caramel albino yellowish color. So this animal is a VPI T positive. He doesn't have any other genes. This is a single gene boa because it's a recessive. He has two copies, so he's a visual. But another thing that I think is great about VPI T positive is that just the single gene looks beautiful. I mean, you don't need any other genes in this animal to have a beautiful animal. It's just a gorgeous animal in and of itself. Although there are a lot of possibilities to combine it with other morphs to make designer boas. But I think just by itself, it's a stunning animal in its own right. So this guy is a 2017 baby that was bred by Peter Messery of Motion Reptiles, who has some really beautiful VPI animals that he's working with. So the initial reason I got into VPI is I wanted to cross it with my Moran boas. Moran is an incomplete dominant form of pastel boa. It's been around quite a while, but it's still relatively rare. And when you cross the VPI and the Moran, you get this beautiful, almost incandescent looking boa that literally glows with these orangish colors. It's really a sight to behold. And I haven't seen too many VPI Moran, so hopefully in the next few years I should be able to produce hets, and there'll be, because I don't want to have a Moran that's het for VPI, so I'm going to have to cross this guy with my Moran females, produce hets, and then I can cross the hets and hopefully produce some visual Moran VPIs and Moran VPI Sunglows and Junglos. You know, this should be quite a sight. So a little bit of history about the VPI boas. So these animals were first produced, the first VPI boas were actually encountered at a pet shop back in the late 90s. And so the owners didn't really know what they had, and Dave and Tracy Barker saw these beautiful boas, and they were able to buy both. There were actually 2 VPI boas that were visuals, plus they bought up the rest of the litter, so they had some hets. And then they started breeding them, and so they were able to cross the VPI visual with one of its normal looking litter mates and produce some VPI boas. They were able to cross normal looking hets with each other, and they got a ratio of normals to VPIs, which indicated that it was a simple recessive morph, and showed it was recessive. And these animals started to become available to collectors back in the early 2000s. And so they've been around quite a while, and you know, initially they were very expensive, but the price of course came down. But they still command a pretty good premium over a normal boa, just because of their beauty. And I don't think they're going to drop that much more in price. I think right now you can get a VPI that's with no hets for about $500 or so. Some of the nicer, like the Pink Panther lines, might be a little bit more. But again, I don't think that these are going to really drop all that much. They're just a beautiful boa. Another characteristic of the VPI boas is that the shape of the saddles tends to have this very characteristic blocky look. You know, very blocky, and some of them have these little extensions almost like widow's peaks, and they almost look like a bearskin rug, like the extensions or the head and the arms and legs of the bear in the bearskin rug. Some other individuals show it a little more than this guy, but this guy kind of has that look. But it's a kind of a blocky, characteristic look to their saddles. The VPI T positive albino is also a great base morph for a number of different combos. And this is a VPI Junglo or VPI Jungle Sunglow boa. And so this animal is homozygous for the VPI T positive albino, and also is expressing the hypomelanistic gene and the jungle gene. So both of those are incomplete dominant genes, and so the animal has one copy of each of those. And so the VPI imparts the reduction of the melanin pigment in this reddish orange color. The hypo also further leads to reduction of melanin, as well as differences in the pattern, like the shape of the saddles is a little different. And then the jungle further leads to aberrancies in the color as well as the pattern. So with the jungle, there's a number of characteristics, and one of them is that you see that there are saddles that are kind of connected. The shape of the saddles is unusual, very geometric looking. And then there's this enhancement of the color such that the dorsal surface of the boa looks very clean and light. And you can see there's this very abrupt gradient in color between the side of the boa and the top of the boa due to the jungle gene. So that's a definite giveaway of the jungle gene. You can see that abrupt gradient. A lot of people are confused with the jungle gene because it's very variable, and everyone looks different, and not all animals are going to have all the jungle characteristics. I actually did a video entitled The Enigmatic Jungle Boa. So if you're interested more in jungles, you know, check that video out. But when you combine the VPI T positive, the hypo, and the jungle, you get this beautiful designer boa, almost like a living work of art. And as you may know, other types of jungle sunglow or junglo boas have been made with the call and the sharp albino strains. But with the VPI, you just have this very unique look, as this animal shows. This animal is a 2018 female. that was bred by Dean Okamura from Serpent Designs. Very highly recommended breeder. But beautiful look. This animal is a few years away from breeding, but I'm planning on pairing her up with the VPI male that I just showed to make some beautiful combos. And I should mention that in addition to the Sunglow and Junglow, you can make other morphs with the VPI, like the VPI Snow Boa, which has the anery in the VPI, as well as the Snow Glow, which has the anery, the VPI, and the hypo. So it's kind of like a moon glow for call, or it's called a sharp moon glow or sharp snow glow. But the 3-gene boa with anery, hypo, and albino is called moon glow for call, and it's called snow glow for VPI and for sharp. But basically very similar boas, just each strain of albino imparts its own unique look to the combo. And I urge you to go and study the pictures of these different morphs on the different Facebook groups and the internet, just so you have an idea about the different looks that they impart. So I have one more animal that's a possible VPI, and this one isn't a visual, but this is a possible heterozygous for VPI. And so this animal I just got last year. She is an IMG Hypo Jungle, and with a 66% chance, 2 out of 3, that she is het for the VPI. Just a beautiful looking animal. This one was produced by Lisa Shannon Rogers of Kentucky Elite Boas. And probably the most striking thing you see about her is the IMG, and this is the increasing melanin gene. And so basically these boas are born relatively light, but then they acquire more and more of the dark melanin pigment as they get bigger. With each shed, they get a little bit darker. Some of them will actually get completely black. And I did a video on the IMG gene, so check that out if you're interested. But when you combine it with the hypo gene, which is hypomelanistic, which kind of seems like the opposite, you get this beautiful appearance. So the hypo IMGs, they don't get as dark as some of the other IMG combos, but they have this huge amount of contrast. So just, very light areas and very dark areas. And it really intensifies the color of the saddles. So when you combine in an albino gene that's missing the melanin, you get this very intense red and orange color with the IMG, as well as greater contrasts between the color and the uncolored areas. And so this animal is also jungle, which further increases the color saturation and enhances the color and the pattern. So really a unique look. I mean, these animals, especially the head with the IMG and the jungle, the head markings are very beautiful. They have these very characteristic light eyes, and then lots of background markings on the head. Another thing I like about the IMG, as you know, I kind of like the dirty look in a boa. And the IMG has a lot of background markings and speckles and freckles, and it's just a really beautiful look. And as I mentioned, when you combine in VPI albino, or really any albino, it just, you have these really crazy, wild looking boas. So as I mentioned, this one is 66% het. So I've got 2 out of 3 odds that it will be het. It'll probably be another 3 or 4 years before I'm able to cross this one to my VPI albino male that I showed you. But fingers crossed that this one proves out, and hopefully I'll get some VPI T positive Junglow boas and Sunglow boas and TPI V positive jungles and all the different combos. If she's not het, that's not that big of a deal. I'll have some het. The babies will be het for VPI, and then later on I can cross the babies to produce other types of combos. So I'm kind of all set either way. But really looking forward to watching this one grow. She's definitely gotten darker. I probably had her for about 8 months now. Just a beautiful boa. So I just wanted to finish the video. So I mentioned that the VPI was a T positive albino. There's a number of other strains of T-positive albino, like the Russian T-positive, or the Prodigy T-positive, or the Boa Woman Caramel Bee WC T-positive, and they all have their own characteristic look, similar to the VPI, but the strains are not genetically compatible. So just make sure when you cross a VPI, you cross it with another VPI and not one of the other T-positive strains. I tend to like the VPI the best. It's just my personal preference, but you might want to check out some of these other T-positive albinos that are out there. So I hope this video was helpful. VPI is definitely a highly recommended morph, both for the combos as well as a boa, single gene boa in and of itself. If you just want a beautiful, brightly colored pet boa, they really retain their colors well into adulthood, and they have this beautiful, almost natural look. They don't look like a freak or some kind of genetic anomaly. They just look like a beautiful, brightly colored light boa. So highly recommended for anybody that wants a morph boa. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your boas.